positive linear relationship between number of products and delivery time. Now, what about distance and delivery time? Do we have a connection between distance and delivery time? Looks so. Again, a positive linear relationship. Okay, delivery time, distance and end product. Okay. What about if I say end product and distance? Your end product and distance. See, though two x values, I have x, I have y. What is my y? Y is my delivery time. You have to remember. Delivery time is my y. On x, what was there on x? X was a number of products. There were two values of x. Number of product and the second value was distance. Now from this pair plot, from these paired scatter plots, we know end product, this delivery time is dependent on end product. You can see here, delivery time is progressing linearly with end products. Similarly, distance and delivery time. Do we have a positive linear relationship or negative linear relationship between distance and delivery time? Can you tell me yes or no? Distance and delivery time. If distance is increasing, delivery time is increasing, decreasing in a linear fashion. So our job with this scatter plot is just to visualize the linear relationship. Slightly positive, yes, you are right, because we have a scatter here. All our data points are scattered here. So, but still it shows a linear relationship. So in order for regression algorithms to work, we have to first find the linear relationship, because regression algorithms works well only on linear relationships. If you have non-linear relationship, like if you have some quadratic relationship in your values, if I take a plot between end product and delivery time and it comes like this, maybe, or it comes like this hyperbola or something. So then in that case, there's no linear relationship between the variables, and regression algorithms might not solve your purpose. They might not give you good accuracy. All right. Now coming to the next point, when you plot this pair plot, we have a diagonal elements. What are these diagonals giving you? Isn't this n prod versus n prod, the first one? This is distance versus distance. This is delivery time versus delivery time on the diagonal axis. So here we cannot plot n prod versus number of products versus number of products. So here it gives you histogram, the frequency of number of products in your data set. Here it's giving you frequency of distance values, frequency of delivery time values. So this is a combination plot actually. If you want to know more about plots, then you can check it in exploratory data analysis, or you can go to the Seaborn, you can learn about libraries. Now let's start inferencing. Our job is to decide what is X, what is Y, give it to the model, give it to the linear regression model and fit the values. So we'll import this linear regression from sklearn library, this package, linear model package. We'll create an instance of it, and then we'll fit our X and Y values on it. Model.fit X, Y. What is my X? My first two columns are X, both the columns. So if I have 25 rows in this data set, so my X becomes, what's the shape of my X? If I have 25 rows in this data set, what is the shape of X? 25 cross 2. 25 cross 2. Not 2 cross 25, okay? Rows first. So this becomes 25 cross 2. So you can check the shape using dot shape as well. It gives you 25 cross 2. And what is the shape of this? Y. What is the shape of Y? Yes, correct. 25 cross 1. 25 cross 1. Okay, 25 rows and 1 column, that is delivery time. So what we are trying to do here, we are trying to fit our model on X and Y so that it can predict the values of Y given the values of X. So we are enforcing this model to learn for these values of X, this is Y. So internally, what the equation which we have seen, Y is equal to M1x1 plus M2x2 plus M0 plus epsilon error values. That equation will be framed some best fit values of the coefficients and intercepts will be found internally. If you want to check those values, best fit values, you can use intercept underscore and coef underscore to check the values. Here you can see what we get. Intercept is coming to be 2.3 and two coefficients. I hope you understand this and do not need an explanation why one intercept and two coefficients. Are you okay with this? I hope everybody is okay with this. So one can be M0. See, the equation here can be, you can look here at the bottom equation is also written. So maybe we have, this is your M0 X1, or you can say M1 X1. We'll take M1 X1 plus M2 X2 plus the intercept value, that is C. Here they have taken C. So C will be 1, but M1, M2 will depend on the number of predictors. We had 2 predictors, so 2 coefficients will be there. If you have more, these coefficients will increase. Okay, so these values will differ. This we discussed yesterday, why these values can differ and how it is not possible to calculate it by hand, by human brain. This is not possible because so many combinations it has to try to get to this best fit value, which the algorithm is doing for us. Though it looks so simple. See, what is in getting 1.6? I could have taken 1x1 plus 2x2 plus some or some of the values for C. We would have tried. We checked it yesterday. You can do it manually, but those things are prone to error and they cannot be proven as well. So this gives you the best fit values of the coefficients and intercept, and then you can go and deploy this model to now predict some new data points using model.predict. Okay. Now this is about visualization. Do not get scared by the code which is written here. If you are interested in data visualization, then only you go and try to understand. Just look here. If we have if you were there in yesterday's class, we talked about this plot on simple linear regression. So we had some data points, and then when we got a best fit line, then maybe the best fit line was this one line we got, because we had only two variables, x versus y. But now we have x1, x2 versus y. We have three variables here. We have three attributes here. So that cannot be plotted on a 2D plot. We need a three-dimensional plot to do this. And now we'll not talk about the best fit equation of line. This will be a plane. This will now be represented by a plane. And this code is just to show you how that plane will looks like, the best fit plane. Now imagine if we increase these number of predictors. When we have two predictors and one target variable, it becomes so difficult for us to visualize and put it here on this 2D plot. What if we have multi-dimensional data, we have more number of predictors? Then predicting these values become more and more complicated, which cannot be done by just the guessing work. Okay, now see, we had x1, x2, and y in the previous example. We had these three variables, three attributes. Now, y was depending on x1. Y was changing with change in x1. Y was changing with change in x2. Correct? This is what we have studied. But I also asked you to notice in the scatter plot that x1 and x2 were also dependent on each other. There was a linear relationship between x1 and x2 also. You remember in the scatter plot? X1 versus x2. If you go back and check the scatter plot, there was a relationship between x1 and x2 also, which tells us that if x1 increases, x2 tends to increase, or vice versa. You can take if x2 increases, x1 also increases. So in this case, when you have a strong linear relationship between the predictor variables, this is actually dangerous for our prediction and we should not consider it. This should not be considered. So either you can take x1 for your actual predictions or you can prefer taking x2. based on the accuracy which you get. So first of all, you can try predicting y with x1, then you can predict y with x2, find the accuracy and see where you are getting more accurate results. But when you have collinearity between amongst the predictor variables, that also should be studied beforehand. Before creating a model, it should be studied and it should be avoided. So how do we understand the correlation between the variables? See, visualization, if you know, you can go for scatter plots. But scatter plots also, at a place, if you have noticed, there were few points which were scattered. And it was becoming difficult for us to guess. There were few scattered points here, and then there was 1 point, 2 points here, and 1 point here. Now, in this case, it becomes difficult to say that whether there's a linear relationship or not. Maybe these two values are outliers, but the remaining values, they are not suggesting a linear relationship. Maybe what if these two are some extra elements, or they have come by mistake, or they are not adding any meaning to this data set. In that case, it becomes difficult to identify. There has to be solid proof that there is a strong linear relationship, and we should know how much strong the relationship is. Now, if I want to just make this decision whether to take x1 and x2, I have plotted a scatter plot. Both of them are giving me positive linear relationship. Which one to take, x1 or x2? Some of us will end up taking x1, some of us will end up taking x2. But if I do it mathematically and if I prove it, then it becomes easy for all of us to come to same page. So we have methods to do this. We can find correlation between the variables using either you can go for Pandas library or NumPy library. They both provide you some ways to find correlation between variables. Do we have it here? Okay, so you can use Pandas CORR method. See, you can take your data frame. So df.corr can be used to find correlation between the variables. Maybe it will come later in the slides. Don't worry about it. The other method, the other way to check the collinearity between the variables, between the predictor variables, is variance inflation factor. So we can do this. What is this? Let's see. Assume you have 3 predictors now, x1, x2, and x3, and you have some target variable y. Now, we want to know is there any linear relationship between x1, x2, and x3? Is there any multi-collinearity between the predictor variables, x1, x2, x3? So this variance and inflation factor, what does it do? If I want to find VIF for x1, VIF value for my first predictor x1. So we'll create a model, we'll treat this as y, and we'll predict this value, the values of x1 on x2 and x3. So we'll treat this set as x, this set as y, and we'll find the relationship between whether x2, x3 can predict y or not. And then we'll calculate coefficient of determination. Coefficient of determination can be calculated using score method. Model.score gives you the coefficient of determination. So coefficient of determination should be somewhere around 1. If it is somewhere around 1, that means we have a good correlation, good variability between my dependent variable and the predictor variable, my target variable and the dependent variable. So here we are making use of this R1 square. So when you do this modeling, x2, x3 giving you y, that is x1, x2, x3 giving you x1. In that case, we'll find the coefficient of determination, put it here in this formula, and find VIF factor for x1. So some numerical value will come, which is more than 1 or equal to 1. This value will always be greater than equal to 1. Why? Because this R1 square, this is score. This score comes from, it ranges from 0 to 1. So if your score is, let's say, 0.98, it means, let's say I have done modeling, simple linear regression, and I have variables x1 and y1. I'm studying this relationship, and my coefficient of determination score is coming to be 0.98. It means that 98% of the variability in your target variable y can be explained because of x. It shows good relation between X and Y, 9.98. So if it is close to 1, it is good relationship. Now assume I have X2 also here. I'll take our own example here. So our example was X2, X3 determining X1. These two determining X1. This is what we are studying here. We create a model for this. Find the value of R square, that is model score. Assume this value is coming to be 0.95. Now put it here. 1 divided by 1 minus 0.95, that is 0.05, which comes to be 20. So this gives you 20. And look at the chart here. If your variance inflation factor is greater than 5, it means the two things are highly correlated. Highly correlated. So what does it tells us? That it is high chances, there are high chances that variability in X1 can be explained because of variability in X2, X3. Okay. So rather than going for correlation, this is another way of checking this, whether the variables are interconnected or they have dependency on each other or not. Similarly, we'll do for the next two attributes. Now we'll take X1, X2 as a predictor and X3 we'll make as target and find VIF. Third group also we'll do the same. We'll take X1, X3. So what will be my third group? I'm writing here X1, X3, and then I'll predict X2 from these two. And study the variance inflation factor, whether X3 can be determined from this. So if you have multiple attributes, this can be done when you take a loop, it can be done using a loop. So we can have a look here what we are doing. Either you can go for NumPy library, np.corr coefficient you can use. So it gives you between two, nprod and distance. We have X1, X2 here in our case, X1 and X2. There were two variables and delivery time was Y if you remember. Delivery time was my Y. Okay, so my X1, X2 correlation coefficient between X1 and X2 is coming to be 0.82. That is actually quite high dependency between nprod and n-distance. And that was pretty clear from the scatter plot itself. We identified this, we visualized this from the scatter plot also. And same thing is getting proven from here as well. That 0.82 means 82% variability in distance can be explained because of nprod or the vice versa. Variance inflation factor. Apart from correlation coefficient, we studied VIF, variance inflation factor. Let's see what VIF says. This is just for iterating. We are doing x dot shape 1. X dot shape 1 gives you 2. 25 cross 2. X was 25 cross 2. So shape 1 gives you 2. So for both the columns, nprod and distance, it calculates variance inflation factor. First of all, it will find X2 from X1, then it will do the reverse and find variance inflation factor. And this is for plotting it here like this in a data frame. So this gives you nprod, variance inflation factor of nprod. That means when nprod is Y, then it is coming this. When distance is Y, then it is coming to be the same. It will be the same in both the case because they are correlated. And 7.8, it is greater than 5. In the chart and the previous slide, we have seen if it is more than 5, then we have good relation between nprod and distance. So ideally, we should not be taking them together. They can be, either one of them can be dropped. But still, you can take it if it is working for you. Now let's see how do we find score. Once the model is created, see, we have fitted the model. We have used model is equal to linear regression. Then we wrote model.fit x comma y. After that, to find the coefficient of determination, we simply have to write model.score. So score function tells us this coefficient of determination, R square value it gives us. So between x and y, we are getting 95. So this means 95% variability in delivery time can be attributed to your distance and number of products. That is actually too high, 95% of the variability, because R square values will range from 0 to 1. And higher the values of R square, the model is considered useful. All right. Now there's a problem in this matrix, that is coefficient of determination, which we have taken. As you increase the number of predictor variables, this tend to increase because of the mathematical calculations behind this coefficient of determination. Let's see here with an example what is happening. See, now we are creating one model, model 1, where we have taken X, this is our X, which is only n prod. And Y is same delivery time, create this model. Score is coming 0.93. Next, second model, we have taken both X1, X2. Y is same, create model 2, find the score, that is coefficient of determination. It is coming to be 0.95 this time. Okay, so this is 0.93. Now my score has become better. It gives me an idea that it gives me an assumption that now this model is better than the previous one, because my score is improving. Now 95% of the variability can be explained. So I'll think this is better model now here. But this might happen because of the internal calculations of score. As you keep on increasing number of predictor variables in X, this will tend to increase. Your score will tend to increase. So in order to avoid this, we can go for another technique rather than directly using model score for comparison. We can go for adjusted square, R squared values. So there's a slight variation in R square, calculating adjusted R square method. It will take into account the number of columns as well as number of predictor variables, that is number of columns and number of rows as well. Because see, if I have only 25 rows now, maybe my R square value comes less. If I take 2500, maybe it will increase. If I take 25,000, maybe it will further enhance, isn't it? So it depends how many rows I'm taking. It depends how many columns. It should depend on number of rows and number of columns as well. Whereas my calculation of R square was not taking number of columns and number of rows into account. So another matrix called as adjusted R squared can be used for comparison between these models. So the formula for R square, actual R square formula is only this. Or the other formula is, you can go to simple linear regression, evaluation of simple linear regression topic, and check R square is SSR by SST. And there's a relationship between SSR, SST, and SSE. SST is equal to SSR plus SSE. That is explained there. What are all these errors are? If time will permit, I'll go back and show you what these errors are. Okay, so it is just a way R square final value which comes for this. R square tells us how good the model is. Okay, how beneficial the model is. So in R square, we have just included these components. Now, what is NK? N stands for number of observations, that is number of rows. K stands for number of predictor variables. Okay, so when number of predictor variables are increasing, see, we are subtracting some component from it. So if you finally analyze this would come, this is SST divided by n minus 1. So n minus 1 will come on top, and this will look like, wait, let me write. This will be 1 minus SSE multiplied by n minus 1. And this n minus k minus 1 will go down along with SST. So this will become SST upon n minus k minus 1. Now, imagine if your k will increase, let's say it was, if I increase this whole component will increase or decrease. If I increase k, n minus k will decrease, n minus k will decrease. If my denominator decreases, this whole component increases or decreases. If my denominator decreases, this whole component increases. Now, if this whole component increases, 1 minus something will further decrease. Okay, so it will bring it down. You can analyze it yourself as well. Okay, so this will bring down or it will adjust these values, number of rows and number of columns here in adjusted R score. So when you find this, there's no method to do this. This can be done using the score itself. So you first find the score and then we can think of multiplying these values. So here we have used model.score into find the length of it. Length of y gives you the number of rows and x dot shape 1 gives you number of columns. That is k. So n minus k minus 1. So we can put it in formula to check the adjusted R score value, which is coming to be 0.95. Now you can see here, this value, adjusted R square value, can be now used for comparison with the actual model. So this is one example which has been taken on a small data set. We'll go for a full-fledged example. Before that, we'll first of all understand this concept because it is actually crucial for, it is an important step before we go and start using the actual data set. So we have different types of data in predictors. So your predictors can be, it's not always necessary that your predictors are numerical values. If you have to predict a numerical value from a numerical value, it's easy. You directly go and do what we have been doing till now. You have seen we had numerical values, units giving you minutes, or the delivery time was dependent on number of products or distance. So a numerical value was predicting another numerical value, but we can have categorical attributes as well. Like we have this data set where we have information about the properties sold in a city during a certain period of time. So we are talking about house prices. This is house price prediction data set. Data set also you can download. Some downloadable link will be there here in one of these slides. So it has one component, it has one attribute, which is view. The name of attribute is view. So whether your house is lake view, garden view, there are 5 such views. And for every view, it has been represented as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, maybe 0 is lake view, 1 is garden view, 2 is something else, okay, and so on. But see, though these are represented in the form of numbers, it looks like numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But don't you think they are still categories? 0 is representing something, 4 is representing something. It's just my way of taking. I have taken lake view as 0, garden view as 1. Somebody else can take it in a different variation, isn't it? You can take it 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 from top to bottom, or reverse, or randomize it. So there can be different ways. These represents categories and not the actual numbers. Are you agreeing with me? So these numbers should be converted to, so we should have some way of dealing with it. We have to convert it to number. We can use the get dummies method of the parse library to convert these type of categorical attributes to numbers, to map it to so that they can be given to these regression algorithms. So now how do we create a mapping for it? This diagram you can see. So you have different values for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which represents categories. And when you use get dummies function, dummies are created. Encoding, this is called one hot encoding, where for every category or for every label, for label 0, look at this. We have 5 labels, so 5 columns will be created in the actual data set. 5 columns will be created with the name as view and the value, view and the value, view and the third value, and so on. Okay, you're calling it. So where at place 0, if I have to represent 0, this value will be 1. Wherever I have lake view, then it will be replaced by this vector. Wherever I have garden view, wherever I have garden view in my data set, it will be represented by this vector, and so on. So instead of having one single column that is view, that we will discard this single column view because it was a categorical column. Instead of view, we will fit this. We will split it into 5, and every value of view 0 will be represented by 1, 0, 0, 0, 0 in 5 columns. 1, wherever it is 1, it will be represented by 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. So it will be encoded. Is everyone okay with this? If we have more categories, see, if you have more categories, more than 30, then if you're going for one hot encoding, it will create more than that. It will create 31 columns. All right, I hope you have understood what is this one hot encoding doing. If yes, then we can go ahead. So if you have more such columns on every categorical column, we have to do this. And you will see in the forthcoming slides how we are doing this. So for now, just one example how to do this, how to use the get dummies functions, pd.get_dummies, and then you specify the data frame. And then you can specify the columns on which you want this dummies to be created, encoding to be done in the column section. So you can specify the columns here. So only one column for now we are doing views. And then when you check it, it comes like this. Along with the original columns, the remaining columns, see how now view has been converted to view 0. Look down here. View has been converted to view 0, view 1, view 2, view 3, view 4. Remaining columns are same because we have done it only on one column. So only one column has been converted. Just for the example, we might have other columns also. We'll see next. We'll pick up the, now we'll follow the end to end. We'll see, we'll take up the data set and we'll do all these steps, pre-processing, cleaning, and then we'll fit the model and see how to create the final model. This data set is there. You can download it here from KC House data. Number of columns, a number of rows, you can see the shape, dot shape. It has 21613 rows and 21 columns. So these are the columns. It has ID, date, price, bedrooms, bathrooms, square feet, living, and lot. Check the info of it. All the columns are not null. 21613, everywhere it is present. And you have one object type and 5 float type and 15 integer type values here. So before fitting the model, before creating the model, choosing the algorithm, instantiating it, before that, we have to go for a pre-processing steps. We have to clean the data set. We have to pick up the required attributes. We have to transform these attributes to a desired shape if required. So here, what we are going to do, first we have a column called date. We are not interested in date, so we'll transform this column date to year and month. We will extract year from the date column and create a separate column as year. Same we'll do for month. From date, we'll split it up into 2 columns, year and month. So we have considered only, out of the 21 features, we have considered only these attributes for the price prediction. So price is my target variable and remaining will be my predictors X. And we'll see whether they all are fitting or otherwise we'll transform them. So initially date we are transforming to year and month. This is how you can pick. If you check the date in this data set, it is like, let's say 2014. So Y, followed by followed by date. This is the pattern without any delimiter in between. So from this date, if you extract 0 to 4, that is 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so till here it is year. So it will extract all the years and put it in a separate column, 0 to 4. Yeah, from 4 to 6, what will happen? This is 4, 4, 5. 6 will not be included, I hope you know. So this will become your month. Year and month will be split and a separate column will be formed for year and month. LOC is a function which is used to locate. So this is for locating all the rows and column year, all the rows and column month. Now, when we have added year and month, I do not want the actual date column for inferencing. We can remove it. So you can drop columns, whatever you want like this. From the data frame, drop and specify the column list here, which you want to drop. Let's do the encoding using get dummies. So let's say waterfront, we encoding on view, condition, grade, year, month, zip code. Now, why month? Month is numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But see, we are still encoding month. We are encoding zip codes as well. We are encoding year. We are encoding grades as well. Grade might be ABCD. This we have to check. Grade is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But still, see, if you have limited categories, month can be only 12. Yes. Zip code in this data set, it might be possible. As far as I remember, there are limited zip codes used. Maybe 3, 4 zip codes are used. So zip code is considered as categorical variable here. Where, see, the quantity of zip code does not give you any meaning. If I say 201204 is the zip code and it determines the price, that number doesn't have any meaning. When that number increases, it doesn't mean that price will also increase, will it? No. With the increase in zip code value, will the house price increase? No. Will it decrease? No, because it has no connection with it, with the quantity of that value. They are actually categorical variables: month, zip code, year, grade, condition, waterfront, and view. So we can convert them to dummies. And after converting, you can see we have for each values, check bathroom 0.0, 0.5, 0.75. So I don't know how many it is going, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 8, 32, approximately 32 values are there for bathrooms. So all of them have been converted to the code. They have been encoded and converted to separate columns. Okay, next, what we have to do here is, see, if I have a price column, these are my variables: number of bedrooms, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or if I talk about grade, there can be difference in the scale of numerical values. Let's say number of bedrooms is in the range of 1 to 5. 1 to 5. Grade might be 1 to 100. Zip code might be 1 to 10,000. These values differ in their range, in their numerical range. So we have to normalize them and bring them to one scale, to one normal scale. That step is called normalization. So for normalization, we can use any of these scalar. Either you can use min max scalar, or here we have used standard scalar. So on these attributes, price, bedrooms, bathrooms, square feet living, and floors, it will normalize these values and bring them all to one specific range, maybe between 0 to 1 or -1 to 1. There are different algorithms which does this. Here we are using standard scalar. So you can see all the values, all these numerical values will be brought down to a scale from maybe -1 to 1 here in this case of standard scalar. So now you can compare the difference. If this is 0.86 and this is 0.39 can be compared. I cannot compare the relation between price. See, price can be in lakhs or millions or billions, but bedroom was 1, 2, 3, 4. How will you compare a value 1, 2, 3, 4 with millions or billions? They have to be normalized and brought to the same scale. So we have converted all the numerical values so that they all come within a range of -1 to 1. This is after normalization, we have to add up the normalized values to the actual data frame and remove the actual columns. From there, this is what we are doing here in these two steps. Drop the actual columns and insert their normalized values in the data frame. Now, once this is ready, then we are good to go. It's just that we have to finalize what is X, what is Y, because till now we had the original data frame. This is my actual data frame. And now we have to split between X and Y. So my Y is price, only the price column I want to predict. Remaining columns will become the X values, remaining predictors, all the remaining from here. From here to here, this becomes my X. All these are my X values. Now look at the scale, the dimension. of this data set. This is only my y, remaining becomes my x. If I go down, so y is price and the remaining columns, drop the price column, that becomes your x. Check the shape of it. It will give you number of rows and columns. Now here we have one more step directly before selecting a model, that is linear regression model, and doing fitting it. We are now using, this is a big data set. See, earlier we were using only 25 rows, 30 rows to understand the concept, but now we are doing actual training. So it's one of the machine learning architecture that we cannot take the whole entries, the whole data set we do not take for training. We split the data set into two parts. One we keep for training, the other smaller part we keep for testing. We use for testing whether the model which has been created by our approach is good enough or not. So we have a method train test split, which we are using here. To give it x and y values, decide the test size, and train size we have not taken here. If test size is 0.2, that means 20% of the values, 20% of the rows in this data set, treat them for, keep them for testing. Use only 80% of the rows in this data set for training purpose. All right, so it will keep 80%, 80% of the values it will use for training, and the remaining 20% will use for testing. So what happens here? I have I have a data set. This is my x, this is my y. Till now we have done only this x and y split up we have done. Now we are doing this as well. Keep 80% of the rows, use only the top 80% x and y values for training. Remaining x and y, we will remove these y values. We will remove these y values, just give the x values to the model and check what are the predicted values of y. So let's say this is the predicted values of y. So some predictions will come here corresponding to all these values of x test. Corresponding to these x test values, we'll get y predictions, and we will have original y's as well. So we'll compare them one-on-one and find the accuracy of the model. See, what we were doing so far, we were checking the accuracy of the model on all the data points. What if I do not split it? I take all the values, train my model, and I'm not left with, I have made my model learn on all 25,000 values which I have in this data set. So my model has learned upon all the values, and then from that data set only I'm checking. How will my model prepare itself for the new values, for new data points? I have to prepare my model for unforeseen circumstances as well. Are you getting? So that is why we do this. We keep some testing data with us to do the testing. See, there are different ways in which test data is split. To simplify, I just told you, consider that top 80% of the rows are going for training. Remaining 20% are not going. This test size you can vary. You can make it 0.1, 0.002. It is up to you. The general golden rule is 80-20. General golden rule is 80-20. Okay. You can go for 90-10, 70-30. It depends. Now here random state is used to start this value to randomize this. If you take any value 0 to 100, you can give here. That means the split is not constant. It will give you randomized values of the rows will be considered here. Now it returns 4 things. Oh, I removed it. We were talking about this split up, and I was about to tell you this. So split between x and y, this set becomes your x train data, and similarly this becomes your y train, this becomes your x test, and this becomes your y test. Okay, this section becomes your y-test. So this function train test split, when you give your x and y values, it will do the row wise split up, 80-20 split up, and return these four sets: the x training set, x test set, y training, and y test. Okay. Now what we do, we will fit our model on what? On these rows only, from here to here. This data we'll provide from here to here. This data only we'll use to train the model. So we'll say model dot fit x train y train. Okay, model dot train x train y train only. Let's see, I'll stop annotating and we'll go next. Import linear regression. Now see model dot fit x train y train, only the first part, top 80% of the rows we have taken. Find the score of the model on the training data set. That means we are checking the performance of the model on the training data set. So training score is coming to be 0.833. That is 83%, you can say, variability. Now, if you do it, if I do it on the test data, check the model score on test data, it's coming to be roughly same, 0.83. If I take it to 2 decimal place, 0.83, 0.83. So it is doing good. Our model is doing good on training and testing data because it's giving same type of values for training and testing. It is not neither overfitting, neither underfitting. So overfitting means if your model does well on training data, because it has been trained upon training data, it should do well ideally on the training data. And if doesn't do well on testing data, it's we can say that the model is overfitting. But in this case, it is not overfitting. We have some other predictors for finding the accuracy or checking the errors. We talked about sum of squared errors, SSE, SSR, sum of squared regression, sum of squared total. All these three things gives us coefficient of determination, that is score. So simply you can write model dot score to check that score value, coefficient of determination. The other way you can do is you can find the difference between the actual target value and the predicted target values, and find the root mean square errors. So let's see, how do we predict now? This component is new here. Till now we have developed the model using the training data. So once you have developed the model, now we are asking the model to predict y values for training data here. In this step, we are asking the model to predict the y values for training data and find the root mean square error here. So we have the original y train values, and we have calculated the training predictions from this previous step. Use it and find the root mean square error. Same we'll do for the test values as well. So ask the model to predict the y values for the testing data and find the root mean square error. Mean squared error function can be used from sklearn.matrix library. You can use mean squared error to find this. So mean square error, under root you have to do yourself by adding this step. This is just to do under root, because mean squared error can be used to calculate the mean of the square of the errors. I hope you understand what the errors are. We have the actual target values, that is y, and we have now y hat also. So y minus y hat, that is the error component between. So take a square of it. We talked about it yesterday. Why do we have to square it? Because otherwise these errors get nullified. So we have to take a square of it. Square of the errors, find the mean value of it. Earlier we were taking SSE, sum of squared errors. Here we are taking mean of squared errors. There's a difference in the matrix. These are different matrix just to analyze the performance of the model. Instead of sum of squared errors, this time we are taking mean of squared errors, right? So what is it giving? It's giving 0.40, you can see, and 0.410 on the training data and the testing data. This also proves your training and testing roughly, they are almost same. That means the model is not overfitting. So if you get high value of root mean square error, that is RMSE, which we have seen in the previous slide, it means that our model performance on training data as well as testing data, both the performances are poor. Though our model has learned on the training data, but still it is not able to do good. When we are going for actual predictions, it is not doing good on the training data. That is when we can say that model is underfitted. Are you getting? Though it is trained on training data, but still on the training data itself, it is not doing good. Forget about the testing data. But if the model does good on training data and do bad on testing data, then we say that the model is overfitted. Okay. And both the conditions are actually bad for us. So this is the whole architecture for the machine learning process. I hope you can relate to it. Yesterday also we talked about it. Take the data, do some feature engineering, remove some attributes, transform them if required, get rid of the null values in your data set if required, normalize the values if needed, or use encoding on the categorical feature to encode your values. Then go for split between train and testing data, keep some data aside for the testing purpose. Then you choose appropriate algorithm and train your model, prepare your model, go for the accuracy check with one of the matrix, either score or root mean square errors or SSE. You can use any of these techniques to compare between the models until you get the desired accuracy. If you will pick up generally, I'm saying if you go take these models and do the check for the accuracy, they'll give you very good accuracies on the other data set. On these algorithms tend to give you more than 95% accuracy. They can give you 99% also.